For generations, Dean Martin was Hollywood's definition of effortless cool. A drink always within reach, a smile that hinted he knew something you didn't, a voice so smooth it made cynicism sound charming. To the public, he was carefree, unserious, almost oblivious to the darker realities of fame. But that image was carefully misleading, because behind the relaxed swagger was a man who noticed everything. Dean Martin was not stupid, he was not naive, and he was never drunk enough to forget what he saw. Those closest to him understood the truth. Dean Martin was one of the sharpest observers Hollywood ever produced. His laid-back demeanor made people careless. They talked freely around him. They revealed themselves without realizing they were being watched, and Dean remembered all of it. Over decades inside the industry, he quietly formed opinions about the people he worked alongside. Not based on gossip, not on public scandals, but on patterns of behavior. How stars treated crew members, how they spoke when cameras were gone, how power changed them when they thought no one important was listening. According to those who knew him best, Dean Martin believed Hollywood didn't just tolerate bad behavior. It rewarded it, protected it, and, in some cases, polished it into something millions of people trusted and adored. Privately, Dean kept a mental list. Not of the most talented, not of the most famous, but of the people he believed were genuinely dangerous, men whose public personas concealed cruelty, violence, or something even colder. This is not a list of rumors. It is a pattern of charm masking abuse, that of studios choosing profit over morality, that of America falling in love with images that conceal deeply unsettling realities. These are the men Dean Martin reportedly considered the most malevolent figures Hollywood ever produced. 1. Wallace Beery, the gentle giant who wasn't. On screen, Wallace Beery specialized in redemption. He played bruisers with hidden hearts of gold, men whose gruff exteriors softened into warmth and decency. His most famous roles presented him as tough but lovable, a working-class hero who could be trusted. Behind the scenes, the story inverted completely. Beery was physically imposing, towering over most of his colleagues, and he used that size relentlessly. According to multiple accounts, he intimidated smaller actors, terrorized crew members, and ruled sets through fear rather than respect. Dean Martin reportedly despised him, not just for his cruelty, but for what he represented. The studio system's willingness to protect a valuable star at any cost. Rumors surrounding Beery went far beyond unpleasant behavior. For decades, Hollywood whispered about his alleged involvement in the death of comedian Ted Healy, the man who helped create the Three Stooges. After a brutal beating outside a nightclub in 1937, Healy died days later. Officially, alcoholism was blamed. Privately, few believed that explanation. Dean Martin reportedly believed the truth had been buried deliberately. Studios protected Beery. Witnesses were silenced. The narrative was rewritten. And the man who played loving fathers on screen continued his career untouched. To Dean, Beery wasn't just cruel, he was proof that Hollywood could launder violence into charm and sell it as entertainment. 2. Bing Crosby, the warm voice, the cold man. No voice felt safer to America than Bing Crosby's. He sang Christmas into millions of homes. He played priests, fathers, and gentle authority figures. His relaxed style made him seem endlessly patient, endlessly kind. Dean Martin saw something else. Behind the warmth, Crosby was reportedly rigid, controlling, and emotionally distant. After Crosby's death, his sons described a household ruled by fear. Discipline came not with guidance, but with humiliation and physical punishment. Dean Martin, who was affectionate with his own children, reportedly found Crosby's behavior incomprehensible and disturbing. What troubled him most wasn't just the abuse. It was the deception. Crosby's public image was built entirely on traits he allegedly lacked: warmth, empathy, and emotional generosity. To Dean, that made the performance feel predatory. America trusted Crosby, and that trust, Martin reportedly believed, was being exploited. The voice that comforted millions concealed a man his own children feared. 3. Errol Flynn, the hero who hunted. Errol Flynn, didn't just play adventure heroes. He defined them. Dashing, fearless, irresistible. Off-screen, his behavior toward women followed a far darker pattern. Accusations of coercion, manipulation, and disregard for consent followed him throughout his career. He was charged twice with statutory rape and acquitted, but the acquittals did not erase the behavior. Dean Martin reportedly warned people about Flynn privately. What angered him most wasn't just Flynn's actions, but how thoroughly the system protected him. Studios cleaned up messes. Publicists reframed narratives. Accusers were discredited or silenced. Flynn played defenders of justice while allegedly exploiting vulnerability in real life. To Dean Martin, that hypocrisy crossed into something genuinely evil. For Adolphe Menjou, elegance as a weapon. Adolphe Menjou specialized in sophistication. Tailored suits, polished dialogue, calm authority. During the McCarthy era, he became something else entirely, an enthusiastic informer. Menjou testified willingly before government committees, naming colleagues and supporting blacklists that destroyed careers. Dean Martin reportedly viewed Menjou as one of the most chilling figures in Hollywood, not because of rage or violence, but because of calculation. Menjou ruined lives politely. He leveraged his refined image to give credibility to persecution. He smiled while livelihoods collapsed. To Martin, that willingness to destroy others for personal or ideological gain was a quieter, colder form of evil. 5. Jerry Lewis, the clown who ruled by fear. No one knew Jerry Lewis better than Dean Martin. For a decade, they shared stages, dressing rooms, and success. The public saw Lewis as a manic child, bursting with innocence and spontaneity. Behind the scenes, Lewis controlled everything. He micromanaged performances, humiliated crew members, and wielded power ruthlessly. Dean Martin reportedly summarized their partnership with devastating simplicity. The public loved the clown. I lived with the tyrant. What disturbed Dean most was Lewis's enjoyment of control. Not perfectionism, but dominance. Lewis could weep for charity on camera and verbally destroy subordinates moments later. To Martin, that duality was deeply unsettling. 6. George C. Scott, genius without restraint. George C. Scott was brilliant. He was also volatile, explosive, and unpredictable. His rages shut down sets. Furniture was thrown. People feared him. Dean Martin reportedly believed Scott's performances weren't entirely acting, that the fury came from somewhere real and dangerous. What elevated Scott in Martin's mind wasn't just anger, but the industry's tolerance of it. Talent became an excuse. Genius became immunity. To Martin, greatness never justified terrorizing collaborators. 7. Spencer Tracy, the violent saint. Spencer Tracy embodied decency. Off-screen, alcoholism unleashed a frightening side. Accounts describe violence, particularly toward women, that studios carefully concealed. Tracy's moral authority, on screen, made the contrast unbearable. Dean Martin reportedly said Tracy could charm a crowd and break someone's jaw within the same hour. To Martin, the real evil wasn't addiction, it was the system that erased accountability. 8. Sterling Hayden, paranoia and intimidation. Sterling Hayden had everything: presence, talent, depth. What he lacked was control. His paranoia, substance abuse, and hostility made him dangerous to work with. Sets became volatile environments. Production stalled. Dean Martin reportedly saw Hayden as tragic, but also destructive. Talent wasted not only his own career, but damaged everyone around him. 9. Robert Mitchum, cool, without compassion. Robert Mitchum perfected detached masculinity. Dean Martin respected his talent, but reportedly never trusted him. Accounts describe cruelty disguised as humor, pranks that humiliated, a lack of empathy that unsettled collaborators. Mitchum's cool wasn't entirely an act. It simply omitted the parts that made people uncomfortable. 10. Robert Blake, rage before the fall. Long before his legal battles, Robert Blake terrified people. Explosive outbursts, uncontrolled anger. an intensity that felt dangerous rather than theatrical. Dean Martin reportedly said Blake gave him chills. When tragedy finally arrived, it felt less like a shock and more like an ignored warning. The pattern Dean Martin never forgot. These men were different, but the pattern was the same. Charm protected cruelty, talent excused harm, profit silenced truth. Dean Martin didn't preach publicly. He didn't expose names on talk shows. He simply remembered, and according to those who knew him, he never confused applause with virtue. Hollywood sold dreams. Dean saw the machinery behind them, and once you see that machinery, you never quite look at the screen the same way again.